everyone, my name is Jenna, but you guys can call me Jen, and welcome back to my channel. Welcome to my cozy October wrap up. I don't know how we're already here. It is November 3rd when I'm filming this. This is just wild. It feels like time is leaking away from me at this point, and I really don't like it. I really don't like it. We're gonna talk about the books that I read in the month of October. October was a pretty good reading month. I think it was fairly good. I don't know. It's one of the taller ones here. So I read 13 books in the month of October. A few good ones. There was 1 2-star, 2 2.5 stars, 1 3-star, 1 3.5 star, 1 4-star, 2 4.5 stars, and 4 5 stars, and a DNF, but that's okay. So it was really just a range of ratings. I ended up reading 5 adult fantasies, 2 adult sci-fis, 1 fiction, and 3 mysteries, and then 1 YA fiction, which also could count for the mystery, but it's YA specific, so I put it there. So if you remember in my last wrap up, I ended the wrap up talking about Gideon the Ninth because I was in the middle of doing my reread for Harrow at the time. So yes, I finished both Harrow the Ninth by Tamsin Muir and Nona the Ninth by Tamsin Muir as well this month. I loved these both so much. This Harrow the Ninth was a reread. I actually read this book for the first time earlier this year, so this is the second time I've read it in 2022. And it's proof that my memory is just absolutely terrible when it comes to really anything, but especially books. It felt like I hadn't read this in over a year, well over a year, when I was going back through it. But I really liked this. It actually gained a little bit of a rating after the reread, because Tamsin's books are meant to be reread because you see so much more, and once you've read them through and then you go back and you read them again, you actually understand what's happening and you can put together these little Easter eggs that she's dropping, and it's just chef's kiss amazing. So I think I originally rated Harrow with 4 stars, but it gets a 4.5 from me now. It is so good, and this series is just really cementing itself as a favorite of all time, truly. Nona also gets 4.5 stars. I think my ratings for this series are now Gideon, Nona, then Harrow, which is wild to me, but I think it's just because the characters in Nona spoke to my soul. God, if you guys want to hear all my thoughts about my reread and very spoilery thoughts about most of these books, I tried to keep Nona fairly unspoilery as I was reading it. I have a whole Locktomb vlog on my channel that I absolutely loved these books. I love these books so much, and I cannot wait for Alecto. It is going to be physically painful to have to wait because we don't even have a cover. We don't have a release day. Come on, Tamsin, give us Alecto so we can finish this. Right at the beginning of the month, I also reread, I'm just in my rereading era right now. I decided to reread the entire Lord of the Rings trilogy over Thanksgiving break, Canadian Thanksgiving, which I did. I read all 3 books in 3 days, which is, I realize, unhinged, because this is like a 1,000-page tome that I'm holding on to right now. It took a lot out of me, I'm not gonna lie, to reread all of these books, but they all get 5 stars from me. My favorite on this reread was Return of the King, which is interesting because my previous favorite was The Two Towers. I absolutely loved rereading these, and I reread this specific edition, which is a really old paperback omnibus that I thrifted back when I was like a kid, and I've just kept with me, and I've performed tape surgery on it, which is why it's shiny, because the paperback was literally crumbling in my hands when I picked it up from the thrift store. I went through and it's hard to tell, but I did annotate it, and I loved this experience so much. It was so much fun, and it was such a good choice to do over Thanksgiving weekend because the vibes were perfection. I was sitting in our cabin, and it was at the cabin too because we went up to the cabin for Thanksgiving. So I was at the cabin, it's fall, it's a little chilly. I was sitting in our sunroom at the cabin with a blanket around me, and I was listening to Andy Serkis read me this book as I was reading through it myself. Absolutely iconic, 10 out of 10 vibes. I did listen to the audiobooks for this one, which is the only reason I could get through them that fast. And yes, I sobbed at the end of this because how can you not sob at the end of The Return of the King? How? I also ended up reading, I think in that same weekend, I ended up reading Mother Thing by Ainsley Hogarth, which was gifted to me by Penguin. And this one I only ended up giving 2 stars. It really was not for me, but it was I don't know, it started out good and it had an interesting vibe, but it's got an almost on the edge of stream of consciousness vibe to it. Our main character is absolutely insufferable and absolutely obsessed with the idea that having a baby will fix her marriage and will cure her husband of his depression and this whole thing. But the premise of this book is that at the literally first page, they're in the hospital because her mother-in-law has just committed suicide in the basement and she ends up haunting them in some way. I really wish that this had leaned into the haunting even more. It was kind of boring on the haunting part. I don't know. It was more of a literary fiction rather than a like thriller, which I wanted it to be. I wanted this to be a haunting, spooky, you know, mother-in-law doing everything to rip you apart from your husband kind of vibe. I wanted it to literally tear down the house kind of a haunting, but that was just not this. It was fine. 2 stars. I think other people will like it though, because that's just my opinion. And I think my friend ended up picking it up after me and she enjoyed it. I think she gave it 3.5 stars, which there you go. Next, I ended up reading Morning Glory Milking Farms by C.M. Nascosta? I don't know how to say her last name, but this I read because my friends and I are in an annual Monster Fucker book club. Last year we read Ice Planet Barbarians. This year we read Minotaur Fucking. So this was fine. The writing was okay. Like, I liked the world building, but I wish they had done more, and I wish we had more of a chance for like what most like regular rom-com romance books do, which is give us more backstory and give us more side character story and stuff like that, because I know this is erotica, I know that, but the way that it is set up, it wanted to do that, but the time skips over like possible character growth were just weird, and I didn't appreciate that. I didn't appreciate that, but it was better than Ice Planet Barbarians for me. I gave this 2.5 stars. I wanted more from the world. I wanted more from the relationships. I wanted to know more about their backstories, and like I wanted it to be an actual proper romance book rather than just porn. So I think that was my issue. That was my issue, which I realize is kind of an unrealistic ask for something that is erotica with minotaurs. Then we get into my little bit of a library book whole thing here. I did an entire vlog where I read through a bunch of different like spooky thrillery books, and it was a really fun time. I started out with my friend's book club pick for the month, which was Clown in a Cornfield by Adam Cesare, or Cesare, I don't know how to say his name. This one I gave 3 stars. It was a really, really fun time to read. It was like reading a movie. And it was just great, but the plotting was whack. It had some really strange, it did some weird choices. It really did. Overall, the adrenaline levels and the gore levels were unparalleled, and it had that good like YA horror vibe. So it had like the YA cliques and the friendships, and it was already like on that level dramatic. Overall, it was just an okay book, but yeah, it was definitely a really fun spooky vibe time and a really fast read. I think I read this in like 2.5 hours. Then I picked up In My Dreams I Hold a Knife by Ashley Winstead, and this one I only gave 2.5 stars as well. It just disappointed me. I had high hopes, but as a thriller, it didn't thrill me in any way. Our characters really were not in any kind of death-defying situation until like the very, very end. And even then, it was almost like self-imposed, and every single person was absolutely atrocious, just awful. And the only reason I kept reading is because I wanted to figure out what happened to the girl who was murdered. So In My Dreams I Hold a Knife, it's a dark academia thriller where we have a group of friends who went to college together, and at one point during their senior year, one of the friends was brutally murdered and her boyfriend was accused. They didn't have enough evidence to keep him in jail, so he was released. And now this is like 10 years later or something, and it's the college reunion, so they're all coming back together, and someone is trying to find out who actually killed Heather that night and like the truth behind it all, and they all have like these different secrets, and it's all this thing. And like it probably would have been pretty intriguing if it was pitched a little bit differently than a thriller, because it really wasn't. I don't know, it gave me secret history vibes, and I DNF'd a secret history, so I just think those kind of books aren't my thing. Then I read my favorite of that weekend, which was Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. This was my second Riley Sager, and I don't know what it is about Riley's books. They hit. They just do. They have the perfect spooky vibe. They have something going on where it's just like, you read it so fast, and it's just highly consumable at like top speed, and it was just really, really, really enjoyable. This one was like a haunted house vibe. So it follows our main character, who is the child of a family who lived in this house for like 20 days or something ridiculous. It was a really, really short amount of time. Became really, really famous for this big stint or event that happened to them while they were there, and they wrote a book. The father wrote a book about it and became really profitable about this, and they kept to their guns that it was a true story top to bottom, but she didn't believe it at all. She did not believe that this house was haunted because she doesn't remember a single thing from this event. She's like, if it was that traumatic for me, I should remember it. She is now a like house designer. Her father passed away many years ago from cancer, and so she ends up finding out, or no, her father just passes away, I think, and then she realizes that she has been given this house that's haunted, which she thought that her father sold many years ago. And so she's like, all right, cool, I'm gonna go back to this house, find some answers, and renovate it to sell it, because that's my job. And so she goes back, and it's got like the haunted house vibes, and it's such a cool setup because we have her storyline where she's back in the house and experiencing things, and then we have the book storyline where it's like the book inside of a book situation, where his book, like her father's book, is chapters are interspersed in it. And I don't know, it just had great vibes. It really, really did. But like with every thriller and horror book that I've read in my life, the like resolving of it disappointed me. So I only gave this one 4 stars because of that. I don't think there's ever gonna be a thriller book that's gonna fully satisfy me in the ending, because what really disappoints me is that the resolving of whatever is happening takes away all the creep factor. And usually the like response or the answer to the question is dumb. And this was no excuse. I really liked this book, and I think it was well done. The ending was way rushed, and I was talking to my friend about it afterwards, and she goes, it's totally unbelievable, and it just didn't work. Like, that's just not how things work. And her mom's a judge, and she asked her mom about the ending in a law perspective, and her mom's like, that's no. So it was just a matter of like, the ending was awful, but the rest of the book was very good, and I really enjoyed it, so that's why it gets 4 stars. It was perfect for spooky season, and I will keep reading Riley Sagers because they entertain me, which is all you really want in a book. This was also at the time where I did my DNF for October. I DNF'd History of Wild Places by Shay Earnshaw. I went into this expecting a thriller, and then I just got a really boring literary fiction about people who live in a commune. Like, the hook was so good. The hook of that book is so good. It's got this man who has this ability to find lost people through their objects. And he's at the beginning trying to find this lost author. He goes missing at the beginning of the book, and I'm like, okay, great. And then the next part, and the next like 3 parts that I read were just these random people in a commune living their lives, and it was so boring, and I don't care about them. But like, the hook was a perfect setup for a book that was not the book we were given. I don't know. I asked my friend who read the book how it ended, and she explained it to me, and I was like, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. And she goes, yeah, that's why I gave it 2 stars. And I was like, yeah, awful. So I'm glad I DNF'd that one. All right, then I read an arc from HarperCollins, which is Bindlepunk Bruja by Desideria Mesa. This is a witchy 1920s Mexican folklore inspired mob bosses book that follows our main character, Rose or Luna. Yeah, her birth name is Luna, but she goes by Rose, as she's trying to essentially make a name for herself as a club owner. That's all she wants, is to be able to own her own club and run it. She loves this. She loves the vibe. She loves the atmosphere, that whole thing. And she's also trying to figure out how to control her magic powers. And in this world that is incredibly, incredibly sexist and patriarchal and led by mob bosses. And she's trying not to get really like mixed up in that thing, but she does anyways. She's also white passing, so she gets like, you know, she gets a little bit of a different privilege than her not white passing brother, who she's hired as her like bartender. And it's full of racism and dealing with the different like sexism and just homophobia in this as well. I enjoyed this. It was good. I gave it 3.5 stars. It didn't wow me in anything, and it kind of felt kind of surface level throughout the whole time. I wanted more with the connections to her people that she worked were working in her club, and I just wanted more depth to it. It felt like it didn't have enough depth to it. It was a perfect read for this time of year. It was a little bit, you know, spooky on some levels just because of the racism and the sexism and the mentions of the KKK and, you know, mob bosses and stuff like that. And it had magic in it because of the Mexican folklore stuff. It had wonderful found family and actual family relationships. So it's like blood family and your found family, the family that you choose. So overall was pretty good, but not exceptional. But yeah, that's Bindlepunk Bruja. And then the last book that I read this month was my favorite ever, and a new favorite book of all time for me. I love this book so much. It's ridiculous. But that is The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sanka Mondana. This book was perfection, my guys. This book, top to bottom, perfect. It is so sweet. It is like Legends and Lattes meets The House in Cerulean Sea. It is cozy. It is grumpy sunshine romance. It is found family and soft. It is witchy with beautiful magic descriptions. There's a scene in here where she harvests starlight. Okay, this is just the best. Okay, I'm gonna be screaming about this book forever. This is like top 3 favorite books of the year, guys. I think it knocked out Addie LaRue for me, which is ridiculous. Follows our main character, Mika Moon, and she is part of this witch society, and these witches in this world are very secluded and lonely because they have this rule that if they get together and if they are near each other, magic will become a little bit more unruly and uncontrollable, and it's a very dangerous situation to be in. So they have the rule where they only come together once every 3 months to like update each other on like new spells and stuff that they've learned or new things that they've discovered, etc. Mika in this, because she's trying to find, I don't know, like human touch and connection in a way. She has started a YouTube channel and she pretends to be a witch online through the way of like what we would consider witches with like crystals and different potions and teas and stuff. And so she pretends to be a witch online to cover up the fact that she actually is a witch. And like the leader of her group, Primrose, is like totally not okay with this. And she's like, listen, it's whatever, I don't care. But through this, she gets contacted by this family essentially that needs a witch desperately to help them raise 3 magical girls. This situation is highly illegal in the witch community, the fact that there are 3 magical little girls all staying in this house together, and they're being raised by this man who's technically their like librarian of this estate. They were brought there by this elderly witch who travels all the time and is not there ever. And there's also a lovely elderly gay couple on the lot who are just the best, Ken and Ian. And then there's a housekeeper as well named Lucy. And so it's these people trying to raise these 3 little girls, and they ask Mika to come out and essentially help them because they have this issue that they need the girls to be controlled under, and it's just beautiful. So she goes and she lives with them for a while and like starts teaching the girls how to use their magic and not be scared of it. And even though it's like magic gets heightened like hell because now there are 4 witches in one little area, it's just beautiful. And like the soft human touch you get in this of like realizing how alone you feel and then finding a place where you no longer feel alone. Just crush me into the floor. Like, as somebody who just consistently feels so alone a lot of the time, this hurt, but in the best way. This book was so good. If you couldn't tell from my reaction, it's so good. Anyways, I read this first for my cozy fantasy vlog that is going to be coming out at some point soon. This was the first one that I read, which was a really stupid idea on my part because it is my favorite, and there's no way that the rest of those books are gonna even come close to this now. So that's fun, but you'll get to see all my thoughts in that vlog whenever that's released. But so good. Truly. Anyways, my friends, those are all the books that I read this month. Please let me know down below if you've read any of these books, or to tell me what your favorite read in October was, because I would love to know. Let me know if you read anything really good for spooky season. I'm here for it. And yeah, that's it. I will catch you in another video very soon. Stay kind and keep on reading.